Guys, today I want to showcase how we can build a page like this in Web. It's a very simple one-pager with some interactions. It's using flex layouts, so it's responsive. We have some button with some hover effects. We have a slider, some infographics with number counters, a image section with a fixed background, and then we have some cards and a very basic footer. So first of all, I want to showcase how we build this hero section. So first, I'm going to go ahead and start a new page. So I'm going to add a blank page to the project, and I will call this a rebuild. So now we have a blank frame, and the first thing we need to add is our background color. So there's some different ways you can do this. Either you can click the button over here, and then you will open the menu here. Or if you have already added something to your section, you can see the menu here disappears, but then you can just go down to the background option over here and then choose a color. I have actually stored all of my colors in variables. So this is just a place where you can store colors, so you can have very easy access to them, and then tie the colors up to different elements to your page so they can be reused. So in this case, I will just click add background color here, and then I will hover over the hex code here, and then you can see we get a little purple dot, and that indicates variables, and then I will choose my background color. So now we have a background color to the section. The next thing we're gonna need is some text. So I will go ahead and click the text tool over here and then drag out the box. And then I will quickly copy the text here and then just paste it in like so. So now you can see we have one text box. You can see it has a bounding box around it, which you can use the handles to drag around like this. This I usually just change to auto and then auto, because that means that they try to stay as close to the text as possible. So there's no extra space around it. Something you can see is that you still have some air on top and below, and that is because your text always has a margin added to it. So usually I just go ahead and just delete the margin right away. So the bounding box just snaps perfectly to the text. Now we also need to add a tag to this text. So when you hover over this button over here, you can see we get all the different tags. So right now it's set to a paragraph tag, but this needs to be changed to a h1 tag or a header1 tag. That is because in all web projects, you need to have one h1 tag, and that usually is in the hero section. So I'm going to change this over here. And there you go. So now you can see it actually changed the styling. That is because we have some default styling for the different tags, as you can see, because the different tags usually have different sizes, but that doesn't really matter because we're going to change the styling of this anyways. So now you can actually see the margin on top and below actually got added back on. So I'm just going to go back here and delete it. And then I will change the font and the color. So I will go ahead and click the h1 tag here. You can see it appeared under the text styling panel here. And then I will go to font family and I will write Ionic. This one should be regular or medium. Yes. And I will choose the alignment to be center aligned. And then for the color, I'm going to choose the main color. Like so. Nice. And as you can see here, the text is also a little bit bigger, and this is actually 64 pixels. So I will go ahead and do 64 pixels. And a small detail here that I added to this previous section is that I've made this gap between the text here a little bit smaller. So to do that, I'm just going to go here in header 1, and then I will change the line height to be 1.2, just so it has a little bit nicer, cleaner look. Okay, and then I'm just going to position this like so. It doesn't really matter for now because they're going to be wrapped inside of a flex layout later. So then the next thing we need is the text below. So I'm going to go ahead and then add another text box. And then I will click this text here, and then I will just paste it in here. Then again, this is already set to a paragraph tag, which is okay for this text box. The most important thing is that this text box has the H1 tag for SEO and accessibility reasons. And then here we can change the font to Ionic. We can change the size to 24. We can remove the margin again so that the box snaps. We can do width to auto, and then we need to do alignment to center. And then for this text box, I want to have the secondary color, so we have some contrast to the different text boxes here. Nice. Now the last thing we need is these two buttons, and as you can see, they actually have a hover effect on them, and that means that they are also turned into something called a component. And a component is actually just a reusable element, so you can turn anything into a component. If I wanted to, I could make this into a component by right-clicking it and then do create main component. And the cool thing about components is that you can go into them like this, and then you can see you have some different options here. Now we're inside the component menu, and I actually have both of these buttons, these two, inside of one component. So you can see now that you have some variants stored in this component, and then you can just easily swap back and forth. So if you were to have like 5 or 6 different types of button throughout your page that would be reused a lot, this is the way you would do it with components. So to make this, I'm just going to go ahead and do another text box. I'm going to write the text, book a call, like so. Then I will see, this is also a paragraph, which is okay. And then I'm going to see if I can add the Ionic font. It's probably around 16 pixels, like this. We're going to go ahead and do auto and remove the margin. And now to get the background color here, we are actually going to just add some spacing around the text and also over and under the text. So when we go to, I click the text here and then I go to layout, I can add some horizontal and some vertical padding. And then you can see the box around it is growing in all the directions. And then I will also choose a background color here, and I'll just choose the main color, and then I will change the color of the font to the background color. So now you can see we have something that looks like a button. What we need to do now is to round off the corners. So if I click the book a call text again and scroll down to border radius, I will then add that to the container, and then you can see we get some rounded corners. If I were to add the very high number here, you can see it would round off the corners all the way. But in this case, I'm just going to use 10 pixels. So now we have the first button. So at this point, I will go ahead and create this into my component. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to call this button. So something that always happens when you create an element into a component is that it switches the width sizing to percentage for some reason. So just make sure to switch it back to auto if that's what you preferred. So if it's hard to see the element on inside of your component view, you can always just click this button to get light mode, and then it's easier to see. And then I will go ahead and create a variant. So I'll call this button 2. And then here, I'm just gonna remove the transparency, which does the same. And then I will change the text color here to be the main color, and I'll remove the padding around and on top. And also I can remove the border radius. It doesn't really matter because you won't be able to see the rounded corners, but it's just a nice thing to do. So now you can see we have 2 buttons. By the way, to copy really quickly, I'm holding Option, then clicking and dragging. You could also do the normal Command C and Command V, but I find it easier to just do Option, click and drag. Here you can see the different variants. So now we have 2 buttons, like so. And what we need to add now is the hover effect. So right now nothing happens if I hover these buttons. So I will go ahead and go into the button. And then you can see here we can add the different variants, and over here we can add the states. So right now it's on the default states, so nothing happens if I hover over it. But if I go to the hover state, then I can change the color of the hover effect. So I will go ahead and click the text because that's where I have all my styling options. This is sort of just a container around it. So you could add a background color here, but it's better to have it on the text itself. So the only thing I will change here is the transparency of the button. So I will go ahead and do 70%, just so we get a little bit more gray color when we hover. And then for the button 2, you see it also copied now over on button 2. So we just need to redo this for this one. Now it has a default state, it looks like this. And on a hover state, the only thing I want to change is to actually make the text 70%. So now you can see if I exit the component, we have a hover effect for this button and we have a hover effect for this button. Right now it just sort of clicks into the new color, but I want it to have a smoother transition. So I will go in here, I will select the text, and then I will scroll all the way down to transition. And then I'll add it to the container. And then you can see we get a easing option, a duration, and a delay. So I'll just use ease in and out cubic because then it starts off slowly, goes quicker, and then goes slowly at the end. So it has a smoother transition. And I'll change the duration to 150 just because I don't need that long of a transition. So now you can see it has a smooth transition between the different states. Nice. So now what we need to do is to change the text on this one. And what you could do is go in here and then change the text on the variant. But that is not really necessary because when you have made a component, you can change the text outside of the component window, like so. And then this should be learn more. And the reason I do it outside here and not inside here is that if I were to have more of these buttons on my page, then I can change the text on each and every one of them. I can change the text on every one, and then it still wouldn't change inside of the component. It would just be outside. So that's a good way to keep your components clean. All right, so now we have all the different text elements. Now, as you can see, when I hover over these buttons, my cursor sort of is not the correct cursor for a button. So what you can do then is just click the button here, go to properties, and then convert this to a button. And then you see it adds a tag, which is a button. And when I then hover, we have the correct cursor as well. So convert this into a button. And now we have all the text elements, we have some hover effects, and then we also have the correct cursor and styling for all of the texts. So the next step now would be to add, maybe we could add the logo first. So that's a very simple task. I have a page here with all of my assets for this page. So I'm just going to copy my logo. I have uploaded the logo as an SVG file in the shapes folder here. So you can just click this button here and then you can upload your SVG files into the shape library here. But since I've already uploaded it, I'm just gonna copy it from here and then paste it into my section here. So what you could have this on is on percentage, and then you can see when you go to the different breakpoints, it will automatically be smaller. But I want to have this in pixels, so I sort of can control the size for every breakpoint. So a breakpoint is just how it would look on tablet and on mobile. And as you can see now, it's a huge mess, so we will need to fix this with flex layouts very soon. But first, let's just fix the logo. So right now, you can see I've positioned this in the center, and then you can see this little icon here also updates. So this is where you're anchoring your elements to. So right now you can see it's anchored to the middle and to the top. So that essentially means that if I'm rescaling my canvas like this, you can see it will always stay at the top. It will always stay at the top and in the middle. Right now I see we have actually added the interactions. I can do that later. Okay. So what I've also done here is I've made the logo 40 pixels on the last breakpoint. So to go between the different breakpoints, you can use this, or you can use the shortcuts 1, 2, and 3. So on desktop I have 60, on tablet I have 60, and then on mobile I have changed it to 40 pixels. And I've also toggled the lock aspect ratio, so that means that if I were to turn it off, I could do this to be 80, and then it will be 60/80. If I do this and then change it to 80, both of them are changing to 80. So that's a good way to make sure that you have your the correct aspect ratio. So the next thing we need to do now is to make a flex layout out of this, so it is responsive through the different breakpoints. So what I like to start with is the elements that have the closest relation to each other. So in this case, I would say that that's the title and then the text below. So I'm just selecting both of the layers, and then you can see we get an option right next to the layout over here, which is called flex. So if I hit that, not really that much happens, but it has turned into a flex layout, and that sort of means they are locked in position in relation to each other. So if I made this box here a lot bigger, you can see we could use the layout option here to sort of show where it should be placed in the box. So right now the text is actually filling the entire box. So this is maybe a bad example, but I think you get the idea. But here, for the same as I did earlier, I just want to change this to be auto and then auto. And then I will position it in the middle, and I will also position this or anchor it both to center and center. So next, now I will select these two buttons and I will do the same. I'll create a flex layout of both of them, and then I'll just do align middle center, and then I'll give them a spacing of maybe 40 pixels, and this one could have a spacing of 20 pixels. So now we have two flex layouts, and now the next step is just to combine these ones into a flex layout as well. So I'm clicking the flex option here, and then we can do align middle center. I'll do the width to be auto. Now these actually turn into pixels. So that's something you should keep in mind as well when you're doing flex layouts. Sometimes you add elements into a flex layouts, and then you should just double check all the different things inside here to make sure they're set to auto or the preferred sizing option. Then, since this is the sort of the outer box of all the text, I'm just going to go ahead and set this to be 100%. So when it is 100%, it's actually filling the save space of the page and not the entire page. So if I were to do viewport width, then like so, then you can see it will sort of always try to keep everything inside of the viewport. So it sort of is a transition through each and every pixel of the breakpoints. But if I were to change this to be 100%, then you can see we sort of have 3 different steps. So it's desktop, tablet, and mobile. And then it's trying to keep everything inside of the safe space. So this is the safe space. So this will always, no matter what, be visible across all screen sizes. But sometimes if you have elements that are outside of here, on some screen sizes, just because of the format of the size of the screen, it can be cut out. So it's important to try to keep it inside of the safe space. So now we have the 2 flex boxes here inside of another flex box, and I will just do 60 pixels for these ones. So you can see we have some options here as well. Now we're stacking them vertically, we can stack them horizontally, and then they will be like this, but I'm just gonna do vertically. And then this I will just leave out because it will never overlap. Right now it's actually overlapping, but we are going to change the text size of this, so it doesn't really matter that this is inside of a flex layouts. It's more for this text to be sort of tight, and I want to be able to control the spacing between the text elements. So now you can see that they are pretty similar. The only thing that is different is that this is on 3 lines instead of 2 lines. And that is because I've added something called a max width to this frame. So I'm gonna select the frame here by command and clicking this frame. That is, instead of having to like double click through all the different frames, I'm just holding command and click, and then I go straight to the frame. And then I go to the width of that frame and I add a max width and I do 600 pixels. So now the width is 600 pixels. And just keep in mind, sometimes I think that's a bug, but sometimes the text can appear on the left-hand side. If it does that for you, just hit the refresh button and it should be aligned to the center again. Great. Okay, so now we have all the different assets. We have tags for the text. We have hover effects on the buttons, also changing the cursor so we know that it's a button. We have our logo and all our colors as well. So the next step now is to make this thing responsive. So you can see we have already come pretty far by having everything inside of a flex layout. You can see that things are stacking nicely. We should maybe just do some small adjustments with the sizes. And then you can see we also have an issue here, because right now the section itself is 900 pixels. But what we want for this hero section is that no matter how big the section is or the viewport is, I want this section to always fill the screen. So what I can do then is then go to the section itself and then change this, the min height, to 100 viewport height. If you go to the drop down menu here, we can see we have viewport height. And that essentially means that no matter how big my viewport is, it will always fill the screen. And since this is also anchored to the center, it will also always stay in the middle. So if I were to anchor this in the top, you can see it will stay at the top. But now that I'm anchoring it to the center, it stays in the center. So now I will go ahead and go to the tablet breakpoints. I will select this title here and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, 48 pixels. This could be 16 pixels. And then here as well, it could be 350. So we have 3 lines. Maybe actually 18 pixels is good. And then, yeah, something like that. And then for the button, the same here. If I go through the different breakpoints and then change the sizing, it will apply for that specific breakpoint. So in this case, it's 16 pixels. So I think that's actually fine. So now it looks like this on iPad. And then when we go to mobile, we can see it's a little bit too big still. So I'll change this to 28. This can now be 16 pixels. And the spacing here could go down to 40. And the spacing here could be 10. Nice. Now you can see we have resized everything across the different breakpoints. And again, I'm using the shortcuts 1, 2, and 3 to go through the different breakpoints. And you can also use the menu over here. Cool, so that's how you build this hero section. So now let's go ahead and try to build the next section, which is this slider. Okay, so this is built with a component which is called a slider. So you don't actually have to build this yourself because we have a huge slider library in our component tab over here. But I'm just going to show how you can find the slider. So if I go to the components over here and I write slider, then we can see we have a slider element. And then if I make a new section here, we can just do like this. Oh. We can add a slider here. And a slider is essentially just a slideshow. So you can see here, you can add images, you can add design to each of the slides, and then you can add external controls that you can use to swipe between the images. And you have a bunch of different properties here for how it should be previewed. Should it be up and down? Should it be side to side? How do I do the easing? Should it be randomized? How many slides should be before and after? You can change the scaling. So you can do quite a lot with this component. And we have if you go to the components here, right now you can see a bunch of libraries. That's just because we are super admins. So you'll probably just see the starter and the sliders and maybe the infographics as well. So if you go to the sliders here, we can go to the slider slide, and then I can select a section like this. So now we have just copied in this section from our library, and then it's just to start designing it. So I will start off by changing the background color to a background color. Then I will go into this. You can see it has this icon, so it indicates that it's a component or a custom component. And then you can see we have the different slides of this component. And then I can go into this image here. I can swap the image. I've already uploaded some images, so I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this. And lastly, I will add this image. I don't really need these ones, so I'm just going to delete the last two, and then it will just loop infinitely like this. If you wanted to change the color of the handles here, you could just go into the components here, and then you can add, then you could add a color to this, because this is built as a button component. But this looks good already. It has a hover effect and you can slide between the images. So that's basically how you build this very simple section. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and try to build this next infographic section. So what I'd like to do when I'm starting a new section is that I'd like to try to reuse as much as possible. So I will just go ahead and select this flex frame with the title and the text below. I'll just copy it in here, and I'll then just switch these ones around. And they were pretty far already in having the title here. So what I need to do now is just switch this to be an age 2 instead of an age 1. So I'll just copy the styling first, and then I'll switch this to an age 2, and you can see the styling got removed, and then I can paste in the styling back again. And then I'll just do the pixel size a little bit smaller, and now you can see we have an age 2, and we have kept all of the design stylings for this text. So now I need to copy the text here. I'll go ahead and add that to this one. And then I'll add this to this one. So now you can see we have the margin again. I'll remove that. The margin is also gone from here, so that's great. And then we would need to change the max width of this one. So this should have a max width of 600. And we can center align this and anchor it to the top and center. Then I need a background color for the section. And then what we need now is the number counters and the circle around them. So the number counters is also a pre-built component by Web. So you can go into the component tab over here, and then you can search for number counter. Then you can drag this out here, and then you can see we have a number counter. It doesn't really do anything now, but we need to add all of the different settings to it. So first of all, I'm going to change the font to Ionic. We probably have a little bit bigger pixel sizing for the text, maybe like 64. And then I'm gonna do 1 to 96%, and I'll add the percent in the postfix, so it comes after the number counter. If I did it before, it would be in front. And then for some reason the animation has a 5-second delay automatically added to it, so you can just remove that, and I'll usually change the duration down to 3 seconds or something. I'm also going to add some easing, so it's easing out, so it starts off fast and goes slower at the end. And then that's basically it. I'm also going to do auto, because then you can see the text box is following the text, and also auto for the height. So now what we need to do is to, let's see here, it's, how much bigger? It's 100 pixels. Okay. So the text is 100 pixels. I'm just gonna do this, and it looks like it was also medium. And then it looked like it had some text below it. So I'm gonna copy this one over, and I'm gonna paste it down here. And then I'll copy the text like this, and then just paste it in here. So now I'll select both of these, and I'll do them to a flex layout. I'll do auto for the width, and then I'll do 30 pixels for the spacing. So now we need the circle around it. So then I'll just create a frame. I'll make this one this color, and then I'll make it have a border radius, and then I'll just copy this one in and then paste it inside of this frame. So now you can see the frame has this thing inside. And then, is this the right color? Oh, it should be, I think I'm just doing 10% or something, 20%. It's good for now, just to get some contrast here. And then I'm having a, okay, so this is 400 pixels. So I'm doing this circle 400 pixels and 400 pixels. And then I'm just centering this in the center like this. And then we have the first circle. So I'm just gonna then copy this circle over and paste it here. I'll change the background color to be black, change the text color to be white, and the text color here to be white. And I'm going to change this one to be plus, and I'm going to change this to be 10. And then I'll copy the text here as well. years experience. So now it actually looks like the could be a little bit smaller, maybe 10, like this. Okay. So the last thing we need to do now is just to select both of these ones and do them into a flex layout. I'm going to remove all of the spacing between, and I'll center this here. And then the last thing we need to do now is to select both of these frames and then make them into a flex layout and do auto. Do the spacing a little bit smaller, maybe 60, 120. 20 looks nice. And then you can see it almost works across all the breakpoints. Last thing we would need to do now is to look at this one. Everything looks good here. So this needs to be centered. So I'm just gonna go ahead and center this. So I'm clicking the frame containing both of these infographic circles, and I'm using the layout options here to center it. I'm going to do the spacing here a little bit smaller. And then here we can do 38 to make it a little bit bigger, because now it's 48 here, and then it can be 38 here. And then we need to make this. Now you can see on mobile, these circles are way too big. So I'm just clicking one of the circles and making it smaller. And this also. Then we will have to readjust this to the center again. This one as well. And then you can see the whole thing is sort of shifted to the right. And then we can just center it like this again. And then it should be okay. So now you can see on all the different breakpoints, everything is visible. It's adjusted to the correct screen size. And the last thing I want to add now is some spacing on top and below. I want to be able to control the spacing over and under this frame. So as you can see, all the sections here have a automatically added 900 pixels as a height. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that completely. And then if I now adjust this to the top or to the center, you can see that the section tries to snap to the edges of the frame. And then I can go ahead and click the section again, and I can add back in some padding on top and below, 120. So then I know it's always 120 pixels on top and it's always 120 pixels below. So now when I go to the next breakpoint, you can see how that looks. Maybe it's a little bit too much on the mobile, so I'm changing it back to 60 pixels, like so. Nice. Now everything looks clean here as well. We're gonna do all of these interactions and animations later. These ones and also these ones. First, we just need to build out the rest of the page. So the next page is also a very simple one. We just need to add a new section. So you can actually make a section with the section tool and also with the image tool and the video tool. So if I choose the image tool now, I can go ahead and click here, and then we have a new image section. So then I'll choose one of my images, and then you can see it's just a regular image like this. But if I were to then select my image section now and then do fix background, you can see it just suddenly becomes very small, but then you would have to do the section a little bit bigger, 100 viewport height, so it's trying to fill the screen 100% of the height of the screen. Then you can see it has this cool sticky background effect. So now if I add a section below here, you can see it sort of stays in the same position while we scroll over, which is a cool effect. So now the last thing I need to add is these cards. So this also I've just added here because it's a good way to learn how to build with flex layouts. So here again, I will copy this text over here and then just reuse it. I will copy the text. And then we need to start building out the cards. So I'll just copy this text here as well. And then I will add a text box. I'll paste it in here. This can be an H3. And then I will change the font to be Ionic. I'll remove the margin. I'll change the color to be dark. And it can be medium. And then we have the first text of this card. So now we need the paragraph. So then I can go ahead and select this text box and then place it under here. It looks like it should be a little bit smaller, maybe 18 pixels. And then I can copy the text and paste it into here. You can see it is center adjusted, so we just need it to be left adjusted. And probably the same for this text. No, it's actually correct. So now we will need the text above. So I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this one and paste it above. And then we can copy the text as well. Nice. And the last thing we need is the image. So then I will go into my image option over here and I will add an image here. So now we have all the elements we need. So now we just need to tie them up with a flex layout. So first of all, I will use these ones into a flex layout. I'll adjust the spacing, change the width to auto. Then I'll select these two and make them into a flex layout. I'll do 30 pixels for that and then 20 pixels for that. And then everything looks good. So now I will select all of them and make them into a flex layout. I will set the width of this image to be fill and the height to be auto. Or actually, I'll set the height to be 300 pixels. So you can see the original format of the photo was a lot longer, but that would look kind of weird on a card. So I'll just force it to be 300 pixels. And then I can just double click the image here and then click the image and try to adjust to something I like better. So now we have everything we need here. I will also actually add here on the text some padding below here. I'm going to show you later why I would do that, just so we have some space here. And then we need to start adding the background for the cards and the spacing. So now I will add some spacing on the sides. I will add the secondary color, but I will do it almost invisible, so only 10% visible. And then I will go down to the border radius and do a 10 pixel border radius for the corners. And the same for this image here, so we can get some round corners on the image as well. So now I will actually change this to auto. So now you can see it snaps in place, but since we have some space added to the padding of this frame, it will still look like there's space in between. So since this is something that should be reused, I'm going to go ahead and create this into a main component and call this card. Then I will just copy this over 3 times. You can see they're just stacked on top of each other now. And I'll select all of them and do a flex layout. The width of the flex layout could be 100 pixels. I will center them and then give them some spacing in between. And then maybe 300 pixels for the image was a little bit too much, so I'll change this to 250. Looks a little bit better. And that's basically how you make cards in Web. So now we can see how would this look on the different breakpoints. This is how it stacks now because we are using the wrap function. So if I were to use the horizontal layout, it will always try to stack things horizontally. But when there's not enough room, it will go outside of the screen, so it doesn't work. But if you're using wrap, when there is no more space inside of the frame, it will then just stack them beneath each other instead. So for cards like this, it's a very good option. So now we can see we have the correct cards and everything is responsive. I don't really need to do any adjusting to it. It's just working out of the box. So here, maybe we can just remove this as well. So now I will go ahead and select the cards and the title and create them into a flex layout as well. What was the spacing over here? 120. So I'll add 120 spacing here. And then the same as for this section, you can see we have the spacing here and here. I want to add this here as well. So I'll just go ahead and select the section and then remove this and then align it to the top or center, and then you can see the section snaps in place. Then I can click back at the section and I can add some spacing here. So now we have all the different elements correctly in place. It's responsive and it looks good. Cool. And then to add the footer is just to add a very simple section like this. I'm going to do it to be 100 pixels. I'll change the background color to be blue. I will copy over my logo. And since it is an SVG file, I can just change the color of the logo to be white. And then I'll place it here for now. And then the last thing I need is this copyright text. So I'll just copy this for now because I think you understand how this is working. So I'll paste it in here. And then I'll do a simple flex layouts for these ones as well. I select both of them, add flex. I'll do 100%. I'll center it like this. Add the layout to be, you see when I'm clicking in the center here, they are stacking in the center, but if I click in between, they will try to split to the sides of the frame. And then I can just do horizontal layout because I always want them to be side by side. So we can see now how this looks in the different breakpoints. I'm going to remove these ones for now. It can just be static. So that looks good. Maybe it could be, maybe we could do the same trick here for the height actually. So I'm going to remove the height here and then just align it to the top, center, and then for the section I'll add 60 pixels or 20 pixels. Nice. So now we have our footer ready. So now we've actually managed to rebuild the entire page. It's still looking a little bit static. So the last thing we would need to do is to add the animations. So to do that, I will start off by see the animation here. We have an animation for it to going upwards, and we also have an animation for it to do the flip. So then I will go ahead and add that here. I'm clicking the logo and clicking interactions, and then I'll do animate. So now you can see it already has a fade-in animation automatically added to it. So I'll change this to a slide animation like this, go from bottom to top, and then make it go a lot further. Maybe we can have 800 actually. And then the duration can be 2 seconds. And then the easing, I want it to start off fast and then go slowly. Like this. Then I need it to rotate. So I'm clicking the plus sign over here and I'm doing upon entering view. And then I'm doing animates. And then I'm going to animation and I'm doing 3D flip. So right now it's flipping in this direction, but I want it to flip in this direction. And then I also need to change this to be 2 seconds and the easing should be the same. Or actually maybe it can be, yeah, I think it looks good like this. Kind of cool. Okay, so now we have the animation for the logo, pretty similar at least. So the next thing we would need to do is to add our animation for the text. So I'm clicking this button, animate, and it should come down and then this should fade in and then these should appear as well. So now I'm doing this, animate, and then slide down. I like this to be a little bit smaller, like so. And then I want it to sort of appear as this thing touches the top. So I'm going to do a delay, 1.5. There it comes. And then I'll do an animation here and I'll change this to a fade in. I'll do a delay of 0.7 since the last one's a 0.5. This can come afterwards, like this. And then I want this button to slide up after that. So then I'll do a slide up. I'll do 30 pixels for the length, or maybe actually 50. Or 100 is good. And then this could be a 0.9. And then this could be, actually instead of remaking the same interaction, I'm just hitting the copy interaction button over here and then pasting the interaction here and then saying 1 second in total. So now the animation looks like this. Nice. Looks pretty good. So then for this one, I just have a simple slide in. So I'll just add a slide in interaction to this one. Slide in. And it could be a little bit smaller. So that's good enough for that one. And then these ones could use some interactions as well. So it's a fade in and then slide up. So then I'm doing animate, fade in. That's good enough. And then animate for this one, slide up. And now it has a little bug with the previewing, but it is actually a slide up. So that looks good. And then the last thing was to have these ones animate from the sides. So I'll just do animate, I'll do slide, and then I'll do slide this direction, like so. I'll copy the direction and I'm pasting it over here and then doing the opposite direction for this one. So then you can see they're sliding from the sides. Nice. So now the last thing I want to add is an interaction to this one as well. So I'm just going to copy the interaction from this one and then paste it down here. Interaction, paste. I'm going to copy the interaction from this one and I'm pasting it here. And then for this, I just want to have a slide in with a stagger effect. So I'm doing slide in 30 pixels. I'm copying this one over to discard, and then I'm doing a 0.2 delay, and then I'm copying this one over and I'm doing a 0.4. So that means when we are coming down to this section, you can see it has this stagger effect for the cards. So that's how you can build a page like this in Web. Now you have gotten a little overview of how you can use flex layouts, so how you can build responsive, how you can use interactions and components and variables, also how you can use pre-made components from Web, and some more advanced components like the number counter and the fixed background options and stuff. So cool. Good luck with your project, and I'll see you in the next one.